from all over the world. I see we've got quite a few different people from all over the globe. So thank you very much to our MVPs also for joining. Arjun, would you maybe mind sharing the slides, then we can kick off with some of the introductions. Thank you very much.
Let me know when it's available. Put it on slideshow mode.
Perfect, it's up. Cool, we're just currently seeing it in PowerPoint.
Yep.
There we go. Awesome. So thank you everybody Thank you very much for joining and welcome. We've got quite a few different speakers with us today, and we'll be pretty much just talking about Studio Web and some of the cool features that have come out there. Studio Web is the newest addition to the Studio family, so it's going to be an exciting topic for us to talk about, and I'm hoping there'll be quite a lot of engagement that we can actually have quite a lot of discussion around. So just as an introduction, my name is Jacqui Muller. I'm the Johannesburg chapter lead.
Can anybody
I think
hear
we lost Jacqui?
Okay.
Yeah, you can take over, Arjun.
Yep, I can introduce Jacqui. So she's the Johannesburg chapter leader and also
I'm an UiPath MVP. And yeah, I'm pretty much here just to kind of get together. Apologies, it seems my internet has died. Have you heard? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you, Jacqui, now. Yeah.
Awesome. Sorry about that. Where did you last hear me?
Yeah, with your introduction.
Awesome.
So if you would like to start again with your introduction, that would be great, please.
Awesome. So my name is Jacqui Muller. I'm an application architect with Dimension Data and a part-time lecturer at the Northwest University here in South Africa. I'm also the head of the Johannesburg chapter, so it's exciting to have everybody here in the same place and having so many MVPs. Welcome to our chapter.
Thank
Juveria,
you,
you want to go
Jacqui.
next?
Juveria. Yeah.
Thank you. Good evening, good afternoon, wherever you're from. I am Juveria and I lead the UiPath chapter. I'm an RPA consultant in Deloitte. I think that's about me. I give it to Arjun.
Good afternoon, evening, everybody. Thank you for joining this session and taking out your precious time. My name is Arjun, and I am working in Cognizant as a RPA consultant. And assist clients and all in their journey, intelligent automation journey. I'll pass over the mic to Reda.
Thank you, Arjun. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Reda. I am an RPA senior dev for Antipode in Paris, in France. And I'm just so happy to have you guys in here, and hopefully it's going to be a good session.
Awesome. So thank you so much to our MVPs for joining us from all over the world. I see we've got quite a few actually joining the chat as well and joining the conversation. So it's going to be great to get a few different opinions and some voices in here as well. Thank you so much for those of you who have joined as guests, and for the very special MVPs that we have who have joined as speakers. Thank you very much for collaborating with the Johannesburg chapter and helping us get this together. So just as a brief introduction, we're going to go through what Studio Web is. We're going to understand and kind of explain how Studio Web came about and what the value add is there. We're going to demonstrate how to actually use Studio Web with some manual-based triggers and event-based triggers. And then we'll look at developing a process with UiPath Studio Web. Perfect. So as a basic introduction to Studio Web, Studio Web is very new to the family stack. It's pretty much the starting point for automation at this point. So it's very browser based, and it's essentially used to understand what you can do with your applications. It is the new part of the edition that also allows you to use integration services to connect to Google Suite, Office 365, and a bunch of different other platforms as well. Now, just underneath Studio Web, you can take it one step further. Now, once you've gotten your appetite for Studio and you want to kind of explore a little bit more, you can go into the Studio X side of things, where you're actually going to look at the citizen developer, or the focus there would be on citizen development. Then we've got Studio and Studio Pro, which is then very much focused on RPA developers and very specialized developers. And essentially that ties into how everything kind of formulates and what you're trying to do from a studio perspective. So one of the big questions that we generally have is, what is the relevance of these different kind of products? And essentially the different kind of products are very much based on the different uses that you have for these products. So if you're trying to just, get started with automation and you're trying to understand what the benefits are to automation, then Studio Web is a really good place to start. There aren't many advanced functions that you can use just yet. The functionality is still busy formulating, and it is quite new, so we're expecting some huge changes in the next few months. But essentially, that is where things start. Once you've understood what that looks like, and you want to kind of learn more, that's when you start moving over to Studio X if you're a citizen developer, and Studio if you're somebody who wants to work with the core functionality. So I think that ties in nicely to the next slide as well. There's a lot of different things that you can do with the different platforms. So like I said, if you're starting out your automation journey, then Studio Web is the really cool place to start. It is browser based, which means that it's pretty much shareable anywhere. You've got some team collaboration that you can advocate there for. There's a bunch of different triggers that you can implement, so you don't need to use the entire UiPath ecosystem that's built inside of the automation cloud. It's a really nice place just to do some of the basic things that you need to do to get started. Studio X and Studio are very much desktop based for those of you who haven't worked with it yet. And essentially Studio X and Studio are then where you're going to be building a lot more of the functionality that doesn't necessarily exist in Studio Web just yet. Then I think if we had to look at some of the reasons why you'd want to use Studio Web, just to name a few, it's really quick to get started. It's really easy to kind of pick it up, and it's very intuitive. So if you know what you're looking for, you quickly hit start. You'll see today with the demos that it is really easy to get into and understand what you're trying to achieve there. Like we said, it does also come with integration service backed up into Google Suite. So if you have a file that you upload into Google Drive, or if you have a document that's coming through via Outlook, those are the kinds of things that integration service then allows you to work with. So for those on the call who are familiar with things like Power Automate, this is now really where the power starts to lie from the event-based side of things. Studio Web is also very much compatible with Studio and Studio X. So if you want to continue building out your processes, those are really great places to do it on a desktop version. Then, like we said, it's browser-based. You can do some live streaming. So when you're debugging or when you're running your solution, you can actually watch how it's running, and you can watch it execute, which is really cool. And I think the big one here, which is really the focus of Studio Web, is that it's an automation enabler. So if you're able to get your kind of feet wet with automation, and you are really excited about what you can do with this, you can take it a lot further, and that's what we're trying to do here. And if we listen to what UiPath have said to us as well, and the message that's come through from actually integrating this into the family, these are really cool things that we can now start doing without needing to configure the orchestrator and configure machines and robots and those kinds of things to work. So yeah, I mean, apart from that, there's really easy sort of scenarios and solutions that can be deployed, especially regarding document understanding. And then another big thing is collaboration. So you don't have to learn alone, you don't have to start alone, you can actually get your team members involved, and you can actually learn about this with more than just one person. So that's from a why should we pick this and what it is perspective. I think from here, I'm going to hand over to Arjun. I think it's your slides next.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Jacqui. That was quite informative. And I would request everybody to please post any questions or queries as we move along the slides, and we'll try our best to answer in between or at the end of this session. What I'm going to drive you through next is some of the interface or the screens which we have for UiPath Studio Web. I would also like you to show that on one of the staging entities, the staging UiPath version which we have. So what I'm showing you on the slide is how to install the Chrome version. So to have Studio Web, you need to install the this on your Chrome or Edge. So this you could easily get from the store, Chrome store and all. So this is just the extension how you use to automate any automations, web-based automations on Chrome or Edge. So you need to have that extension enabled. And where it all begins is once you have the cloud version of UiPath with UiPath Studio, which is in preview mode right now on the community version, you could see on the left panel, the studio, and over here, you'll see the options of new project and import project. If you would like to import a project, you could either take it for a .uip version, which you would be able to import it here, or you could go on by creating a new project. So once you create a new project, you'll get this dialog box, which asks you for the name, description, and the, how does the automation start. So if you would have been using Studio or Studio X, you straight away have the capabilities of a loader, a dispatcher, etc. However, here, it is a way to define us for the project that are we executing this manually, or it is via a trigger. A trigger could be via an email, or something landing in using the various interfaces of Google Suite, Microsoft 365, etc. So, or just go for manual, where you will be able to manually trigger. I'll show you the options for that in a couple of minutes. So you can see over here, when I selected a trigger type, then I can choose that, okay, trigger it when a new email is received. Now this is connected to my Microsoft Office 365 inbox, and it will trigger based on the parameters when the new email is received. And if it's manual trigger, then it will execute when you run. These are some screen snippets, which I would, let me just share my other screen with you. And let me walk you through these ones. So this is the view which I have on my cloud version. So over here, you can see the left pane, and over here, this new project. These are some of the projects which I've created in past, and you can see these icons donate, whether it's manually triggered or it's triggered using any further trigger type. So let me select a new project, and let's call it UiPath Web Demo. And if I say, okay, sorry, there's a time-based as well. Sorry if I missed that. So when you select event-based, I say create. So over here, you can see that it's loading. And then over here, the trigger categories are for now this one, but UiPath is also coming up with some other trigger categories as well. So let me just say new email received. So this is the interface which the Studio Web version provides. You can see that this is installing. Now, what this is doing in the background is it is installing the package. Now, if you're familiar with Studio and Studio X, if you want any packages to deal with email, etc., then you have to install that package. However, UiPath does do that in the background as soon as you select an activity. So if I want to select a click activity, which is most of us are familiar to, which comes under the UI automation package, I say click, and you can see it's actually installing the UI automation package in the background. So what it is showing here, this requires a scope that it requires a use browser. So I need to add this within a use browser. So this is how the interface looks like, and it provides you basically a journey where you do not have to have anything on your machine, and it's pretty infrastructure free. And you can see over here, there are a few toggles. There's the toggles to execute the project. So although you now, when we come into the debug modes, yes, they are not so familiar as to how we have in Studio and Studio X, because of definitely you're using something which is browser based. So you would have to execute using the run and run step by step. There's a publish toggle here, which we'll come to in a few minutes, and the undo and redo. Over here we have, which is, over here, which is a pane which is called as Open Data Manager. Over here, you could create the argument or the variable you need for your workflow. And over here, you will see the open run out, the output, basically the logs. In order to execute logs, you should put logs in between, which you'll be able to see here then. So, and you could see that this new email received Now this is using the session of my 365 account. So this will show the folders, whatever I have. So you could change your root folder to choose here. And you also have some additional options to then select various properties on how we do it in Studio X and Studio on the right-hand side. There's this 3 toggle option, which is available on most of the activities for you to change, even switch to manual trigger, because this is the trigger type and all, but you can see add breakpoint is one of the option present in this toggle. So yeah, if I go back, how you could export this into a project is by clicking these 3 and say, I want to download project, and the extension type for this is a .uip, which you will be able to use in your Studio and Studio X. So keep in mind that this is evolving. There are a lot of activities or functionalities which UiPath is coming with, and there's a lot of other integrations which you could use with Studio, which are integrations that most of the organizations offer cloud-based. You may ask me that when you make a workflow, how will this get executed? So this gets executed on a serverless robot, which actually spins up on a Linux server, and the folks will show you how that is done in a PIP mode, where you'll be able to see a machine which is executing your workflow. So yes, there are a few restrictions around, whether you will say that I need an application, a desktop-based application, which needs to be executed on the serverless robots, which becomes a bit tricky because that application is something which needs to be installed. And henceforth, this is very much suitable for any cloud-based automations. Though UiPath, I am sure they do have some plans on how things could progress, and they could, use more what we use in Studio and Studio X and Studio Web. So I'm going to go back to the slide deck and pass over to Juveria to run through the event-based trigger.
Thank you, Arjun. That was an amazing explanation. If you could move to the next slide. Yes. So what are we doing today? We are going to build a very simple process that gets triggered whenever an email is received in your inbox. Once you receive the email, you have to read the email and see if there is an attachment. You filter the email based on the subject and the type of attachment. So the type of attachment we are going to use for this demonstration would be a PDF document. Once I receive the email, I read the email, I get the attachment and upload it to my OneDrive and archive the email. So this is a very basic event-based trigger process. Now I'll share my screen and walk you through the process, and we'll build one. All right. So what you see on my screen is basically a flow that I developed just to run it before you guys. And what I have as input is this email that basically comes, sorry, let me bring it back to inbox and mark it as unread. So yeah, this is our input email. The subject that I am going to, or we are going to use in this session is Studio Web session. The document type will be PDF, and this is the email that I want to read. Once I read it, I want to mark it as read and move it to archive. Then what I want is this document to get uploaded in a very specific folder within my OneDrive. The folder name is Studio Web. So what I've done, I have a flow. I'll run the flow before building it. But before that, let's talk about the basics as how do we start. So this is the studio that Arjun described, Studio Web. And before even starting, we need to do 2 actions. So let's move on to UiPath integration services. Now, when you have to, currently there's one event-based trigger process that you would initialize within Studio Web. That is when you receive a new email. And for that, you need connectors on integration services. So what you have to do is configure 2 kinds of connectors for this process. That's Microsoft Outlook 365 and Microsoft OneDrive and SharePoint. It's very simple. Go to connectors, look for your connector, or add a new connector. So add a new connector is basically adding a custom connector. Connections, go back here, click on Add Connections, look for the type of connectors that you want. So for example, in our case, it would be Microsoft Outlook. So my Microsoft Outlook 365, click, and then authenticate. I'm not going to go into this process because I already have 2 of my connectors over here, and the connection status is based on how it gets authenticated. Now, the way you authenticate onto your integration services would be replicated back to your studio. So this is what we are going to use. Now let's get back to Studio Web. Let's run the process simply and see what I have told you works or not, right? So let's run. So what happens if you see runtime logs are also generated in Studio Web. So these are your runtime logs. Log activities can be used to generate logs of your choice. So those are custom logs. What we are seeing here is runtime logs. That's it, it's done. So once everything is executed successfully, it basically gets a green tick. If there is an error, you'll basically see a red tick or a red exclamation mark within that activity. So let's see, did it work or not? Let's go back. Yes, inbox is empty. So let's check my archive. I have the email in archive, process 1 done. Let's see if this document was uploaded within the OneDrive or not. Refresh the page. And yes, there is my documents. Let me delete it and let's build the process together now. So I'll go back to my studio. I'll create a fresh project. So when you, these are projects that I created also. So if you create an event-based project, you would literally see the kind of event that you initialize that becomes, you say, call it side icons. But if it's a manually triggered process, this is the kind of icon which you would see. Now let's start with a fresh project. We'll call it Studio Web Session. Sorry. And how to start the automation? Let's look for event-based. Now there are 3 kinds of triggers we could have: manually, time-based, and event-based. Let's click event-based and click on create. Now, currently there's just one trigger condition that Arjun has explained and that I've been explaining. Let's look for Microsoft Office 365. And when you click on this, what happens in the background, this gets connected to your integration services connector that you've just created or you will create for yourself. So let's do that. And it installs. So what is it installing? It's basically connecting to your instance of Outlook through integration services. Done. Now you see a red mark. For us, yes, because we haven't configured it, right? Click on this. Click on the root folder or the folder icon and look for the folder in which you will receive the email. Best part is, if you've got subfolder within your inbox, you could basically just select it from here. So if you've done an automation in Studio Web, Studio Pro or Studio Desktop version, you basically have to write inbox / and then the folder goes in, right? This is slightly easier. So we would click inbox and click save. Now, I think we have 2 conditions. First, my email should come with a very specific subject. And second, my attachment should be only PDF type. So let's configure that, show additional options. I want emails that are only with attachments. Good. Include attachments, yes, true. Mark is red. By default, it's false, but I want for my case to be marked as true. Okay, let's mark it. Let's click on additional filters, click on add connection, and here. So now what I want to look for the subject, a very specific subject type, right? Subject and contains. I want it to contain this as the subject. Let's see, what is the subject? Studio Web Session. So I'll copy this from here. And I am going to populate it here. That's it, and click on save. Now, what you see is in the output, a default output is generated. You do not have to create any variables to get an output stored somewhere. This is one advantage of using Studio Web that I believe. Great. So now our two conditions. Our condition number one is in the process. That is, filter the emails based on the subject. Now, what I want is once you receive the email, I want you to download the email attachments. So how can we do that? This plus sign adds new activity. So click on plus and click, type download, download email attachments. Let's look for download email attachment. Let's click on this activity. And that's it. So do you see one thing? Like when I got this email activity, it took a bit of time to configure this connector. So this connector is actually from the integration services, right? This one. The name is this. I've named it as Intelligent VS. And that's what you see. It populates next time when you use different activities. Now, what I want is the email. So this activity needs to know which email you're looking for, right? Click on this. Click on new email received. Click on email received. In our case, we need email received email. That's what I want. I want this output to be fed into download email attachments. That's it. Now filter by file names, right? Click on add. Click on advanced search. Give it some time. Click on add filter. Click on add condition. Now, second condition that I told you, I want attachments that's only in PDF format, right? Look for that, either file name or file type. So we are going with file type. So click on file type and PDF. Very simple. Save it. Let's look at the additional options. There's nothing else that I want to change. I think this is good, and I'm going to leave it there. Now, what I want is you've downloaded my email attachment, upload it to OneDrive, right? Click and look for activity, upload. Let's look for the activity, upload files, uploads of specified files to OneDrive or SharePoint. So for this, I've already configured my integration services connector. So this is called as Microsoft OneDrive and SharePoint. I'm going to use it here. Click on this activity. Again, you see, this is the name that I have. I should have named it better, I know, but this is the name I have, and that's what you see over here. Now, which file do you want to be uploaded to your OneDrive? It's basically the output of this activity, download email attachments, right? Click here, this one, and download attachment list. Is there anything else? No, downloaded attachment list. That's it. That's what I want. Now, I want a destination folder. Where do you want to upload your file? Simple. Click on this folder icon. Double click on OneDrive. And look for the folder that you want. So I want Studio Web. I'm going to click Studio Web and click Save. That's it. Nothing else that I want to do. Now, what I want, in my flow is, I read the email, filtered the email, downloaded the attachment, uploaded to OneDrive. Now archive it. So click on plus sign again. Look for archive activity. So archive email, click. And which email are we archiving? So which email are we archiving? It's basically the output of new email received. So the output is new email received results. So this is the email that I want to archive, right? Click here, new email received, received email, and received email again. So the output of this activity needs to be archived in this, using this activity, right? We are done, we are good. Now let's run this. Before I run this, let's go back and create an input. Inbox, I'll mark it as unread. Okay, I hope there's no document here. Yes, good. Let's run our flow. I'll click run, simple. all what you see over here is your runtime logs. I could have added log activities to give you much better log results, but I think it's okay for the session. And Reda would be showing you that. So now it's trying to get an email and it's done. So you get all the green ticks. Let's see what happened. Right, inbox is empty. Archive has my email, and let's see the ones right. Beautiful. Let's go back and let's click on publish. Do you want to give a description? Go ahead. I don't want to. I'll just click on publish. That's it. So when you publish this, you basically get a nugget package that gets published on your orchestrator work feed or workspace. So this is all about event-based trigger. I'll stop my share, or I'll leave the share open, but I'll stop and take a pause if there is any question. Unmute yourself, please. And if not, I'll move ahead and give the control to Reda. Stop the share.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Juveria. I think there are a lot of questions that Jacqui is doing a great job of answering in the chat. So thank you for that, Jacqui, and thank you, Juveria. That was so clear and it couldn't have been better. So I will just share my screen and hopefully you can all see it. Okay, tell me if you can see it. And we will explain the process that we have today. Can you see my screen? Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, so basically, thank you, Juveria, for showing us the event trigger. This is something that has been waited for so long in the UiPath ecosystem. Now we have it in the Studio Web, which is very good. And we are going to see a use case where we can use this and we can make sure that this is actually working, not only for a context of just archiving a mail, but also in a use case where we need to create an automation that is based on an event base, which is an email, for example. So the use case that we are going to use for today is that let's just imagine a vendor, a shop basically, receiving an email from a client that they want some item that they want to purchase from them. So basically the process, if we have a robot that will go and search for the item, it cannot be triggered regularly. It cannot just be triggered every day or something. Because we cannot expect the client's wishes. We cannot expect what the clients will want. So basically the clients will send us an email, we will receive it, and then we will launch the robot that will go and search for the item. So I am going to slideshow. We're going to start from here. Okay, so we will have an email that is going to be launched by the clients. So we're going to launch an email from our side where we're going to mention the item and the quantity that we required. Then, of course, we're going to use the Acme system because we already have a system in place, and it is web-based. So it is perfect for our use case. The robot will then be triggered by the email, not manually, not regularly by a trigger. It's going to be triggered by an email. It will go and log into the Acme system. It will go to vendor inventory, and then I will search item by item for all the suppliers that we have. We will try and see this in live, so I can show you exactly what the robot will do. And then we will send an email and trigger the process to see exactly how it happens in a production environment. So basically, this is the Acme system. We basically log in. Then we go to the vendor inventory. And then we will click on check inventory to see the items that we have for this specific supplier. So we have a list of different suppliers, and we have to look for the item for the different suppliers. So we can have the item for the first supplier, but we can also have it for the second supplier. So the robot has to go and search through all the suppliers and find the item that we want. Good. I will just go to Outlook because this is what we are going to be using for this use case and for this demonstration. I already have the email prepared. We will send it one more time in order for us to work with this email. And I will tell you why we need to send it one more time. So basically the email is hello, search for the item, this item, and the quantity that we want is this quantity, regards. We will try to send this one more time. We'll try to keep exactly as if we're sending it for the first time. And I'm going to send it to myself. No. Good. Okay, I'm going to send the email. I'm going to mark this one as red. Okay, so basically I just received the email right now. So this is my email, found the right item. So I've already created a process that will do all of this. I don't think we will have enough time to recreate the process. So I'm just going to run through it, show you exactly what I've done, and then we'll just run the process and see it working in real life. So this is an event-based, like Juveria have just shown us. We will have a new email received. Then the robot will retrieve the email, retrieve the body of the email, and then will go and log into the Acme system. It will get credentials. We already created an asset with credentials in the orchestrator that can be retrieved directly from here. It's so easy to do. Then it will type in the credentials, the email, and the password. It will click on login. It will click vendors inventory. We just have a delay of 2 seconds, and then it will just go through every line that we have, and it will try to search for the item. And I have an activity of highlights where we can see exactly what's going to happen, and we can see it actually searching through every item. So basically, it will just get every line, and then if we find the line, we will break out of the loop. If we can't find it, then yeah, we will just have an email as if we didn't find it. But in this case, we will find the item. So I will just run it, and then we can see what's going to happen. So basically, once we run the project, and since this is a process that's going to actually work on UI, we won't simply have the logs, but we're also going to have a PIP. And this is something that has been added by UiPath, because we actually said, where is the process? We were actually confused because we always work on the studio and we see the process working. And when it's not working, we just get confused. So they've just added this PIP for us to see the process working. And if we see there's some, it's so much easier once you see the process working. If something it's not working correctly, if an activity is not working correctly, you can just basically try to work on that specific activity. It makes the debugging so much easier. So the PIP that they've added was actually so good. And we have the PIP and also the log. So we have them going basically simultaneously, so we can see both of them working. And I think now, because I am sharing my screen, I'm using my camera, everything is kind of slower, but normally it's so much faster than this. So it's already started working. So it's retrieved the email that I have. And there is something that I missed that I will share with you once the process is going to end. I've triggered the process manually. I will tell you why. But basically, the process is working right now. It's already logged into the Acme system. It will start by going to the first. Yeah, it starts going by to the first supplier, and it will go line by line. I think my sharing is a little bit slow. You can't see everything, but we can see the highlights. It's going line by line, searching the item line by line. Okay, so I'm sorry, I will go back to, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, we missed it a little bit because I was trying to pop up the, yeah. Well, now it's working line by line. We didn't see it, but basically it just went line by line. Now it's highlighting the cost per unit to tell me that it has already found the item, and it will send me an email back saying that I found the item and this is the cost per unit for this item. So as we can see, I just received an email right now of saying, hello, the item has been found in the inventory list of the supplier. This is the supplier where I found the item. And then with the quantity required, the cost per unit for this item is this one. So I can make a decision, either I'm gonna sell it to the person in question that they asked for it or not. So basically that's the example. It was not smooth to actually show it, but basically this is the example. Now, as you have seen, I've launched the process manually. Normally in production, it will be triggered by an email. And what happened is that once we launched the process manually, and because we have to debug the process at one point, if it's event triggered, we will be retrieving the emails that we have for the last hour. So basically, the robot will go and try to find the emails that we have in the last hour, and it will search for the email that have the specific filter that we've already gave it to it. So for this filter, for example, we gave it a filter where the subject contains inquiry item available. So basically, the robot will go and find the email with inquiry item available, and it will retrieve the information that we have here. It will split everything, get this exact item, much like we do in the on the studio, and then we'll start working. Now, the use case in itself, it's not so important. What is so important is that we have event triggered in Studio Web, which is a great thing, actually. And also, we can create processes that are simple enough in Studio Web. So this is something that is really interesting. And the fact that we can create simple use cases, and the fact that UiPath will add so many things to your Studio Web. Studio Web have only been in preview for 1 month now. All of these things will make Studio Web something that we will look at using in the future. If you have a web base, and the process is simple enough, there's no reason to go with something else. You can just start by Studio Web, and the things will go so much smoother. And once you launch the process, you don't have to worry about if the application is open, if the application is closed, because the process is always gonna use the same steps. It's always gonna log in. So you don't have to worry about all of these extra steps that you use in Studio. I will go back to the presentation. So basically, we've just seen the demo, and we have the logs and the PIP to say that we have the PIP today, so we can see the process running, and we also have logs that are extensive enough for us to understand the process. And if you guys let me, I will just run the process one last time, because the last time we launched it, it was not as smooth. So I will just run the process one last time for us to see it working, and then I'll give you Arjun I will just go back to you in order for you to answer any questions that we have. So as we can see here, we have the PIP. I will just open it in a new tab. So the logs are running. Once the process is going to go to the web base, it's going to open up. We will start seeing things happening. So we can see it, type in, click on login. Then it will go to vendors, vendor inventory. Okay, I can see in the logs that it has already started looking for, but in here we can't really see it. So I think that's the problem. The problem is my PC is not strong enough to show us enough frames, but it's okay. It's okay. So yeah, this is the second one. Now it's better. We can actually see it. So we can see it's going item by item, and it's showing us the things that it's searching. So, okay. And now it's going to go to the last item. It will compare it to what we have in email. It is what we are looking for. It will retrieve the cost per unit, and it will send us an email back at the end, like we can see right here. It just sent us an email right now. So I think that's all for me. Thank you guys for sticking out with me. And yeah, see you, Arjun.
I'm not sure if Arjun is still with us.
Yeah. Well, if Arjun is not here, you were doing a great job, Jacqui, of answering the questions. So we can just take over if we already have some interesting questions that we can answer for everyone. That would be so interesting.
Yeah, so we're opening for more questions. I see there's one or two more that have come into the chat. So let's maybe just give it a second or two to see who else pops something into the chat.
Okay.
Maybe I'll take the last, the very first question that I see from Christopher. That it says, what if I use MS365 based event-based trigger in the process? Will it be able to execute, or is there any kind of authentication triggered in that instance? Another user is trying to use my process from auth. So in either scenario, when you have this process and you're performing this, you basically have an ID dedicated to your system. Sorry. And that you will use to create your integration services connector that I showed you before even building the process. And that kind of authentication is used. So your Studio Web will not log in using your credentials, but what you use to configure your integration services connector. I hope that answers the question.
Christopher, does that answer your question?
Oh, hello.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. It basically answered my question. There are a lot of specific use cases. I think, like, what if I set up my Outlook to look in a specific folder that I have in a specific path in my mailbox, that I'm not particularly sure that the end user is having that as well. So are these things that we need to take into consideration when using this, or is that too specific for this tool?
So there's like a basic understanding for this, that if you're using integration, so we are using integration services, and when you create the connection using integration services, whatever ID and password you provide for authentication would be used while running the process as well. Now, say you are automating something that lies on your Outlook. Forget automation. Tell me this, like without automation, does anyone else has the same credential to access your Outlook? I believe not so, right? So ideally, this should not be done even using automation.
Okay. Yeah. What if it's a shared Outlook account?
Oh yeah, then you use your shared mailbox ID and password. So it would work in a very similar fashion. You use that to authenticate your integration services connection, and that same authentication or login would be used by your Studio Web processes.
Okay, so then will be shared. Okay, yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Just one more thing to add on to that. When you're considering using something like integration services for that kind of project, what you do also need to consider is whether you actually have the administrative permissions you need to be able to allow your account those permissions. So what would generally happen is when you try to authenticate with one of those connectors, they'd ask you, if it's the first time that you've logged in, to actually allow the permissions that you need to essentially use to be able to read the mailbox. Now, in some cases, it has happened with some of the connectors that they ask for a lot more than what certain administrators would allow, especially if your administration is being handled by an internal IT department. So that would also just be something that would need to be taken into account for. I know lots of client environments actually require you to motivate for getting those permissions accepted. So that's also just something to keep in mind.
Is that something that prompts automatically when we're trying to use those integrations, or is it something that the client needs to set up in their Azure environment beforehand?
So it really does depend on how the environment is set up. If it's not a really ring-fenced environment, then they usually allow users to, just click allow and then everything works. But in other cases where everything's ring-fenced in the IT world and everything's set up in Azure Active Directory, then it would need to be configured in the background, or as soon as you actually apply for that permission, then somebody in the admin or the client's environment's administration center, we just need to approve that approve that request, and you'd have your access. So it's not massively tedious. It's not like there's a lot of configuration that needs to go into it. If it does go to the IT department, you just need to know who it's going to so that you can chase for approval.
Okay, thank you for answering all my questions, also in the
Awesome.
chat.
You're welcome. Then I see Rohit asks, do we still have to create machine templates and assign licenses to run processes? So if you do choose to not run yeah, the answer is yes, because if you run serverless, you need to actually add those machines. And if you want to use machine templates, and you'd actually need to assign licenses and run from there. Juveria, I don't know if there's anything that you'd like to add to that, or even Arjun and Reda.
I think you were on point, Jacqui.
I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
So so the question is, do we have to still create machine template and assign licenses to run processes? That's basically true. So if you go on Orchestrator, you could see the kind of machine template or the robots that you want to create. Earlier, it used to be a standard machine or a shared one. Now you have one more option of cloud robots that you can choose and create your machine template and assign licenses for the same.
Yeah.
So I hope that answers.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like Jacqui already answered the question. There's also an interesting question. Yeah, is it possible to run any code like Python or VB script in UiPath Web?
We would like to.
We'd like
love
to,
but not yet. I hope it's going to come in the future, but I'm not now. We have to understand that even though it looks so flashy, it looks so good, and it is good, it's still like just 1 month in preview. We still need, and we are still waiting for a lot of things that will come. And the fact that there is that much hype, it's surely going to be a successful product that we're going to start our automation from. So yeah, not yet. The answer is not yet.
Yeah. Hopefully when we get more control over being able to build our own libraries, that's something that we can do.
Char API call limits, and how do you handle that? What do API calls in terms? Are we calling something? Go ahead, Jacqui.
No. Yeah, sorry, I'll take that one, because I think, and Charles, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this might be coming from a Power Automate perspective. So from a Power Automate perspective, you've got really complex licensing around how your per user flows and your per user plans work and your per flow plans work. So depending on the plan that you choose, you actually have an API call limit that you can hit. Now, Reda, the API calls aren't the calls that we're making. It's actually like if you set a variable, it's a call. That's what they refer to as an API call. So you're literally, if you've got like a 2,000 page document that you're trying to process, and you've got a call limit of like 7,000 in a day, you're not going to be able to process much, because like you've got a for loop and you've got some stuff happening in the for loop for each page. And then you very quickly and easily hit that limit. So from a UiPath perspective, it doesn't work like that. So there aren't API call limits. All that you're paying for is the licensing to actually be able to use it. And then depending on if you're using serverless or not, those are the licenses that apply.
Okay.
I think, Jacqui, there might.
So it works very different to the way that Microsoft works. Sorry?
Sorry, Jacqui, I just wanted to intervene. Sorry, can you hear me now? Yeah, I just wanted to intervene and say that there might be a bit around the integration service API. So, there's a limit within UiPath licenses as well as to the number of executions you can use. So it might be double check that as well. So we could probably take this question away, ask one of the product managers, and then let Charles know.
Yeah, so from that perspective as well, thank you for pointing that out, because it is important to note that as well. So from the integration services perspective, the API limits that you've got per service that you're connecting to would apply. So for example, if you're going to connect to SharePoint or OneDrive, that 15 meg limit that they've got on that API from a Microsoft perspective would apply. So from a UiPath perspective, they're not putting any, or from what I've read and from what I've understood from the product teams, they're not actually putting limits on the usage from our side on the APIs. The API limits that apply are then what is put into place by the vendors that produce them, or the third parties that produce them.
Okay, I think are we good to progress ahead towards the Mentee meter? Cool. So the Mentee quiz, yeah. So if everybody could.
I think Arjun, you should declare what we have behind Mentee.
Yes, so we have a voucher for you, which will allow you to buy a gift from UiPath gift offering. So yes, you'll be able to gift yourself or gift anybody else a UiPath product or a goodie from the UiPath store. So
And the
if I
winner,
can
do not forget. Sorry, and the winner, do not forget to post your email in the chat. So we don't want to miss you. We really want to give you the voucher. So please put your email down.
Yes, please. Yeah. Or you could reach us on LinkedIn, etc. So, but please provide your provide your email details so that we can forward you the voucher. So if I would request everybody to just go on mentee.com, put this code or scan the QR. Meanwhile, I'll get the quiz set up. Okay, I'm starting the quiz at my end. Okay, I can see some of the players coming in. I'll swap my screen in a few seconds here. Okay, I've got 7 players. Okay, I'll swap the screens. Yeah. Okay, let me know if you're able to see my screen.
Yep, it's up.
Okay, I think we're good to go. Okay, so answer fast to get more points. There are 5 questions. The first question being Studio Web is blank-based automation tool. Options are desktop-based or browser-based. The answer is browser-based. So let's see who's top on the leaderboard. Okay, we have Katia. I hope I'm spelling the name right. Yeah, so yeah. Let's move on to the next question. So select few advantages of Studio Web. You can select multiple choice over here. So options are, there's no IT dependency, there's no installation, always up to date, need to have robot to be installed on your machine. So what would be the advantages? Okay, so yes, those 3 are the advantages of using Studio Web. The first 3, now let's see the leaderboard. Interesting. Okay, Sebastian is leading now. Radu was the fastest, but Sebastian is leading overall. Question 3 of 5, is Studio Web compatible with Studio and Studio X? Options being yes or no. Yes, it is compatible. So you could export a project from Studio Web and use it within Studio and Studio X. However, vice versa, it's not existing from what I see, but I'm sure the team would come up with a resolution around that or some compatibility in future. Okay, Radu is leading now. What is a project extension of a project created in Web Studio? .xaml, XAML, .xml, or .uip? It's .uip. Okay, let's see the leaderboard. Oh, I think Surya, every time it's changing. Interesting. Last question. Let's see who takes this one away. So amongst the following, select the Executor debug options available on Studio Web. So multiple options you can select. So the options being run, step into, run,